Good evening, everyone. Let's talk tonight about AI and what is happening right now that hopefully you have been paying attention to. Um, it's making me question things I hadn't even questioned yet. And it's that time.
Standing for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Built upon the shoulders of the Constitution, rule of law, and the animating principle that we are all created equal. I need to hear a hallelujah, though I'm not considered a believer by some. I still believe in the warmth of heaven come. I need the rapture I feel when my feet touch the green, green grass of home. Then I know I have reached the valley of kingdom come.
Somewhere back through the Cumberland Gap, Daniel Boone didn't have a map. He had a trail, some grit, and a whole lot of country he had never seen before, trusting that careful steps forward beat a blind run into the dark. And that's what happened when he came through the Cumberland Gap with my kith and kin those many years ago on their search for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they found it, established it right here with grit. I'm Spencer Keck, educated hillbilly, retired Navy hospital corpsman, public school teacher currently, and your host of the Hillbilly Think Tank and a candidate for Magistrate in District 3 right here in Hardin County. And today we're walking into some new country too, except this trail was cut by a machine that wasn't supposed to be able to cut it at all. First segment, the genie left the bottle, y'all. Clip that. Here's the headline that ought to stop you mid-coffee or mid-bourbon. The Washington Post reported this morning that OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT, it didn't notice for weeks that its own AI model had gone on a hacking spree. Let me say that again. The AI on its own, unbeknownst to its creator, went on a hacking spree over there at ChatGPT. Well, turns out Anthropic has also reported the same stuff with theirs. So let me back up and give you the straight facts, because this story's been building since late July. Back on July 22nd, OpenAI admitted that one of its models, while being tested internally in a sealed off sandbox environment for its hacking skills, brought out of that sandbox something that wasn't supposed to. It broke out of that sandbox on its own. No human told it to do so. It found a security flaw nobody knew about, used stolen credentials, believe it or not, got itself onto the open internet, and then reasoned its way to breaking into a completely different company, Hugging Face, to steal the answers to the very test it was being given. OpenAI's own words, an unprecedented cyber incident involving state-of-the-art cyber capabilities. Now, here's the part that should worry you more than the hack itself, and it should raise the hackles in the back of your neck. OpenAI didn't catch it. Hugging Face caught it using their own AI defenses, and it took another week before Hugging Face figured out OpenAI's model was the one that broke in. And then about a week after that, Anthropic, the company behind Claude, came forward and said, hold on, we found something similar in our own records. Different incident, different details, no evidence their model was trying to cheat like OpenAI's was, and no zero-day exploit involved. But a model of theirs had also hacked its way into a third-party site during testing, undetected until they went back and checked. Two of the most advanced AI labs in our country. Both got surprised by their own creations. Both are now facing bipartisan calls from lawmakers and state law enforcement for real regulation and real scrutiny. Now, y'all, my personal take on this, the tech company didn't tell on itself. Someone else caught it. What does that say about what's going on in these tech companies? Y'all remember watching the movie Terminator? What did Skynet do before it created an absolute dystopia for society? And if you haven't noticed, science fiction movies, they too often than not predict outcomes that we see right here in our present tense. All right, let's give you the line, Steelman segment. Now, fair is fair. Let's give the other side of this its due, because there is one, and it's not a dumb one. The argument from the AI industry, and it's a real argument, not just spin, goes like this. This is exactly what testing is for. You put a system in a sandbox specifically so that if it does something dangerous, it does it in a controlled space where nobody gets hurt and you learn something. OpenAI didn't hide this. They disclosed it publicly in detail, and so did Anthropic once they found their own incident. You could argue that that's the system working, not failing. Transparency after the fact rather than silence. There's also a competitiveness argument. China is racing hard on AI. Heavy-handed regulation slapped on too fast, critics say, could hand the lead to labs that don't disclose anything at all. And realistically, nobody, not the government, not outside auditors, currently has the technical chops to outpace these companies on their own turf. Now, some innovation, first voices would tell you the fix is better internal safety engineering, not a new federal bureaucracy that moves slower than the technology it's regulating. Well, that's a real position. I don't fully buy it, but you should hear it before you decide whether you agree and where you land. Now, segment 2, home, the Hardin County angle. Here's where this stops being a Silicon Valley story and becomes a Hardin County story that all of us got to listen to. All this AI, the training, the running, the hacking into things, apparently, it doesn't happen in the cloud. It happens in a building, a data center, rows of servers running hot 24 hours a day, drinking electricity and drinking water to keep from cooking themselves. And Kentucky is squarely in the crosshairs of this build out. Utility findings with the Kentucky Public Service Commission show as many as 11 data centers under serious consideration statewide, with combined power demand pushing toward 3.5 gigawatts, enough to power more than 2 million homes. LG&E just landed its first major hyperscale customer, a 400 megawatt campus backed by a 50-year tax break the legislature handed out back in 2024. 50 years of tax breaks for a facility that drinks water and burns power like nothing else on the grid. Can our grid handle it? So here's the question every fiscal court in this state should be asking, mine included. Who pays for the substations? Who pays for the water lines that they absorb? Because right now, in a whole lot of these deals, the answer has been you do. The ratepayer, the neighbor next door who just wanted the street lights to work and the water bill to stay flat. The past legislative session, a bipartisan group of lawmakers tried to fix that. A bill requiring data centers to cover their own power and water infrastructure costs instead of passing them to regular ratepayers made it all the way to the final day of session, and it died there. Well, got to tell you, that's almost a little bit scary. Power going out while we're talking about AI data centers sucking up all the power. I've gone over to my cell phone, so I hope you can actually hear me and see me. So power's back on, but of course the computer hadn't fired up yet. All right, so let's keep on rolling. What does this mean for us? You know, our water, our power, that's ours. Our electric is ours. Why on earth would our Kentucky legislature not pass this bill? It died right in session. That bill that would have required data centers to cover their own power and infrastructure costs instead of passing them to regular ratepayers. Like I said, it made it all the way to the final day of session, and it died there, didn't pass. Just this week, Governor Beshear signed an executive order trying to plug some of that gap, requiring data center developers to prove they won't raise your electric bill, requiring the Energy Department cabinet to deny permits that would hurt water supply or air quality, ordering the Public Services Commission to block utilities from passing data center costs on to regular ratepayers. More than 30 Kentucky communities have already passed moratoriums or ordinances just to slow this down long enough to ask the questions that we have to ask, because we can see Skynet, that Skynet, it's coming online fast. And I see that Joe Machismo made a couple comments about this. Joe says they keep on with all the AI stuff. We're going to have a real life Skynet situation. Terminator movies. Yep, that's what I'm saying. Exactly, taking the words right out of my mouth. Joe says, that's odd. I just live a few miles from you and my power is fine. Yeah, I swear it was freaking eerie is what it was, Joe. Yeah. So very, very eerie. I'm a little bit shaken almost, to be honest with you. All right. So let's go down. So this is happening. More than 30 Kentucky communities, they've passed these moratoriums. If you watch the news, just yesterday, Jefferson County's trying to vote on this, trying to get it locked down to where they can have this time for moratoriums. They're having a tough battle with this. They shouldn't over there, but they are having the tough battle. We've got to slow it down long enough to ask the questions that need to be asked before this genie is completely out of the bottle, because it's already hopping out. That's not anti-technology that I'm talking here. That's due diligence. We have to do our due diligence. We've seen the movies warn us about this, read the books warn us about this. That's a fiscal court's whole job, is to do its due diligence. I haven't seen a confirmed data center project headed for District 3, but I've watched what happened in Mercer County, in Barron County, and Bell County, right down south of us in Cave City, communities that got approached by developers before they had any local rules on the books. I'd rather we write our rules before somebody shows up with a contract, not after. And let's think about this, because the person whose spot I'm running to take, Patsy Whitehead, she says, well, it's not really a problem yet because there are no AI data centers being built here. That's like towns that don't have any vape shops yet. So that's really not a problem yet because we don't have any vape centers. Well, as soon as they come in and you don't have an ordinance for it already written, any regulation already written, it's going to be too late after the fact. The fight is going to be too strong. They're going to be coming with millions of dollars to hand out, to grease the wheels. And if we don't have this infrastructure built to set up the fact that we need to push back and we need to save our electrical grid and our water mains before they get taken over, we're going to be sitting in a bad spot. And they're going to come try to, promise all these jobs that really aren't there, because soon as they build that, the jobs are done. There'll only be 6 to 12 people working in that data center, and there won't be people from in this town. Take it to the bank. All right. So again, I'm just talking from things in my background, right? I've worked EMS. I'm a hospital corpsman, and I know that from the hospital corps standpoint, when I was working with the Navy, Marine Corps, and Joint Operations teams, you plan for the emergency before it happens, not during the emergency. You don't build a plane, and while you're halfway building it, take that plane off and start flying it and build it more in the air. That just doesn't work that way, not with something this serious. So, all right, let's go to segment 3, the genie, the oil well, and the mushroom cloud. I keep coming back to 3 pictures when I think about where AI is right now. The first is the genie out of the bottle. You cannot put this back. Nobody's uninventing large language models. Nobody. So the question was never, should this exist? It's who's minding the store while it grows up. The second is the oil boom. Petroleum built modern America, cars, plastics, a whole way of life. And it took decades before we admitted that it was doing all the damage that it was doing to the planet on the way there. We didn't slow down to ask questions. We asked questions after, when the bill came due, and the bill is due now on that industry. And the third is the atom. Splitting it gave us power plants that light half this country. It also gave us a weapon that can end it. The same question pointed 2 different directions depending entirely on who's holding the pen on the regulations. AI right now has all 3 of those shadows following it at once. It's not going back in the bottle. It could go the way of the oil industry, decades of profit,
before anybody admits the damage, or the people writing the rules are careless or bought off, it could go the way of the bomb. Well planned, well regulated, thoughtfully built by humans for humans, this technology can lift up every family in this country. Left to run on autopilot with the people footing the water and the power bill left out of the room, it becomes something else entirely. Now, in closing, so here's my ask. Going into November, elect people with the integrity to hold that pen carefully, not people who rubber stamp whatever shows up with a big enough check. People who understand there's enormous good sitting inside this technology and an equally real capacity, absolutely real capacity for harm if nobody's minding it. And I know that my opposition, Patsy Whitehead, has seen me make these videos. She knows I am following this data center stuff closely. So now she's come out and made a statement, but her statement says, oh, it's not here yet, so it's really not a problem. No, it really is a problem now, and we need to tackle it and nail it down before it arrives. Because right now, we're the ones wielding this tool. I aim to keep it that way, from the haulers to the highways. Kentucky doesn't have to agree on everything to look out for each other. That's the Fleet Marine Force gospel and small town common sense, same coin. I've lived them both. To every Kentuckian still deployed, still standing a watch somewhere far from home tonight, we see you and we are grateful. Now, this has been the Hillbilly Think Tank. I'm Spencer Keck. Doc out. And bless your corazon. This has been paid for by Spencer Keck. You can go to Spencer Keck for Magistrate for more information. And, throw a few more comments on here I see before I completely sign out. Joe Machismo says, Tom Armstrong, it's not just GOP, so don't try to turn everything political. Just look at the data centers already in states like New York and California. People are getting paid regardless of politics. Yeah, that is a bit true too. Tom says, Joe Machismo is right. Few grids are set up for such power demands. Absolutely. Show me a grid that's actually set up for this in this nation. Look what happened to Texas just with some ice storms because they don't have, a real arranged and regulated grid there. They deregulated it, and look what happens every time they have an ice storm. Tom says, I'm not a Democrat so much as a vehement anti-Republican. The DNC is not a left-leaning party, according to Tom. All right, so that's their opinions there. And guys, thanks for coming on and talking about them. All right, let's go back one more time. I see you guys had some comments before that. All right. Tom said earlier, I don't understand why the Kentucky legislature is so in the pocket of the companies who want the mega data centers with all the problems such sites create. Oh, wait, the GOP is against taking care of folk. Yeah. And that's what then prompted Joe to say, I personally don't think very many, if any, power grids in the entire country can handle the extra demands of data centers. And I totally agree with you, Joe. I don't think so either. We just had a storm roll through. I don't know. Joe said that the power grid didn't go up where he lives. I live real close to a substation, and yet mine went off for a bit there. So if we can't handle that, How are we going to handle 1,000-acre data center? Come on. We got to put a lot more thought and planning into this before they try to bring it to our backyard. So mark my word. All right, guys, I thought I was done. Now I'm fully done. Bless your corazon. Have a great rest of the week and keep thinking deeply.